If you couldn't tell, I have a lot of LUMIX cameras. I've used all of these cameras for personal use, creating content on my YouTube channel, and professionally. I've also used them in many different places over the years and have been using LUMIX for almost 6 years now. 3 years of that I have been exclusively on LUMIX. So because I've been around the block, there's also a lot more buzz around LUMIX these days, it feels like. I thought I could give a lot of people some good insight when it comes to buying your first LUMIX camera as a beginner, intermediate, and advanced camera user. If you don't know me, my name's Dustin, your video tour guide, and remember to keep your arms and legs inside your chairs at all times. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. I totally forgot. Before I get into some disclosures for this video, I want to tell you about the actual sponsor, PicTime. PicTime is an insanely powerful platform built for photographers and videographers. It's packed with so many features that I couldn't even fit them all into a 90-second integration if I tried. You've got AI gallery search, built-in print shops, marketing automations, vendor networks, slideshows, automatic blogs, the list goes on. But the one I personally want to highlight, and the one I use all the time, is their online galleries. Before using PicTime, my delivery system for freelance photography was honestly kind of a mess. Confusing Google Drive links, inability to view files before downloading, and nothing looked cohesive. It wasn't convenient for clients and definitely didn't make me look as professional as I wanted to. Now, everything is so much more streamlined. The galleries look beautiful and are incredibly easy for clients to use. Photos and even video clips sit side by side, it's mobile friendly, and it just feels premium. I've used it for corporate events, live concerts, and even recently on some product shoots. And here's the best part. PicTime's Black Friday sale starts today, and it runs until December 1st. They're offering 200 free gallery migrations plus 30% off your subscription. Now, if you're still watching this after the sale, I still recommend checking them out at the link in the description, and that link is an affiliate link, so it helps support the channel if you sign up through that. Huge thanks to PicTime for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to it. Full disclosure about all these LUMIX cameras besides the one I'm filming on. They are all on long-term loan with LUMIX. Because I've made content on LUMIX for a really long time, I have a good relationship with them. I've done sponsored content on my channel, created media campaigns, spoke at events for them. I've even created a course on all LUMIX cameras that has been endorsed by LUMIX themselves. Just a little shameless plug. There's a link in the description if you want to learn more and join the over 400 students that are mastering their LUMIX cameras. If you're trying to get up to speed on LUMIX, it's probably the best place to do so. As you can tell, my liking and bias for LUMIX runs deep, but I still try to give good insight and things to think about in all of my videos when it comes to LUMIX. I'm not an ambassador. They don't pay me to make these videos, including this one, unless it is marked as sponsored, which this one is not. So let me tell you how I'm structuring this video. I'm essentially going to put these cameras into 3 separate tiers of buyers: beginner, intermediate, and advanced buyers, and talk about why I put these cameras in those tiers. So first off, let's start with the beginner tier. And the first distinction you need to know about is the G series and S series cameras. So G series cameras, like this one, are micro four thirds, and S series cameras, like this one, and this one, are full frame cameras. Essentially, it's just a bigger sensor on the S series cameras and a smaller sensor on the G series cameras. But I'll get more into the difference in a minute. But if you're a beginner, the best LUMIX camera probably to buy is a used one that came out before the LUMIX S5 II. The first LUMIX camera that I bought is one of those cameras, which is the LUMIX S1H. So besides the ones that you see right here, there's a lot of other ones out there. There's the GH5, the GH4, the S5, S1, G9, I could go on and on, but the reason that I say that is because of price. These used ones will be by far the best bang for your buck LUMIX camera, especially if they're used. But there is one downside you'll need to be aware of before you do buy one of these cameras. All of those cameras will not have the phase hybrid autofocus, which essentially means the autofocus is not super great, especially when you are filming videos. It's okay for photos, but not great at all for video. So if autofocus is important to you in your first LUMIX camera or even your first camera, this is something to consider. However, know that manual focus is nothing to be afraid of. My first LUMIX camera, the S1H, and most cameras I owned before LUMIX didn't have good autofocus. So I had to learn how to shoot manually, and it is a good skill to learn. But if your main purpose is more to shoot only like family or personal videos, I understand why you'd want good autofocus. If you are maybe wanting to start making videos professionally and making money with your camera, I would say you should learn how to shoot manual focus early in your career. Okay, so now let me move on to the cameras I have right here. There's something important to know when it comes to these LUMIX cameras' features that they offer. All of these cameras almost have all the exact same features. The menus are almost identical, and I'm going to try and give you the most important details on what makes them different and why I put them in certain tiers over others. So finally, in the beginner tier, we've got the LUMIX S9, S5 II, and G9 Mark II. These quote unquote beginner cameras, I put them here because of the price. They range between $1,000 to $2,000, depending if you buy new or used. And really the only reason I mark them as beginner feature-wise is because they have less data-heavy recording qualities, if that makes sense. They still offer more pro recording options, like these two right here. They both can shoot in RAW over HDMI if you like. I believe it's a paid upgrade, but it is possible. Now that's a very brief explanation, but let me talk more practical reasons to choose one over the other. If you are more of a hobbyist, you travel a lot, you make short social media content, or you need a good camera for family videos and photos, or you just want the smallest, most fun camera that packs the most punch, then the LUMIX S9 is hands down the one to buy. It comes in fun, different colors, and it is the go-to camera I choose for all of those reasons, or if I just want a high-quality camera that looks very inconspicuous. As fun as it is having a bigger, cooler camera, it also draws a lot of attention. I've taken it on vacations, taken family photos. I even have a video where I had this camera in Japan and shot a ton of footage with it everywhere in Japan, and it was just so much fun and easy to bring with me across the country. Really, its only downside is that it can overheat. It packs so much punch that if you record for too long or film on a hot day, it may overheat on you, so be aware of that. Guess what though? If you want something more reliable that doesn't overheat, let me introduce you to the answer, which is the LUMIX S5 II. This camera essentially has everything that the LUMIX S9 has, but it has a fan, so it's not going to overheat on you. And it's also very difficult to spot where the fan is on this camera. It's in the eyepiece right here. And speaking of which, it also has an eyepiece, which makes it easier for you to look through to take your photos. You also have a hot shoe right here, which is just this top thing that allows you to connect power and maybe a flash or some audio attachments. It also has dual SD card slots, so you can record to both cards at the same time or separate your photos and your videos onto different cards, and a few other features because of those cards. This camera, the G9 Mark II, is essentially the same camera as this one. It's just the Micro Four Thirds version. So it essentially has the same features that this camera has, besides this one's missing a fan. But because it's a smaller sensor, that tends to not draw as much heat. So hopefully this guy isn't super prone to overheating even without the fan. If you don't know what the smaller sensor does as opposed to a bigger full frame sensor, really the only thing is that your background blur is going to look a little different. The background blur is going to be more blurry on the bigger sensor. In fact, it'll be essentially 2 times more blurry on the bigger sensor and 2 times less blurry on the smaller sensor. One or the other are not better, it's just more about preference. I prefer full frame cameras over Micro Four Thirds cameras. However, that can come with some caveats. Full frame lenses are typically more expensive. They're typically bigger and they're typically heavier. But don't be fooled. You can still get big, expensive, heavy lenses on Micro Four Thirds depending on what you buy. But those are some caveats to consider. Now, I don't want to get too specific on the features of these cameras because I have a ton of videos on these cameras and there's a ton out there. I'm mostly just sticking to who these cameras are for. Beginners, hobbyists, newer content creators, or if you need a camera for travel and family stuff. Honestly, my top pick is just the S9 in the beginner category because look, it's a fun color. You can add like fun color handles. I mean, I guess you could do that here as well, but I've got like an orange and silver one. This is my go-to family camera. I actually went on vacation a couple of weeks ago and took the more pro camera just because I was being picky, and I actually regretted taking it and wished I would have just brought this. This little S9 is by far my favorite LUMIX camera. Something to note as well, and this applies to any of the cameras I talk about besides older LUMIX cameras I mentioned, and that is that they all work with the LUMIX Lab and LUMIX Flow app. Basically, these apps give you the ability to transfer your photos and videos to your phone. You can also download LUTs or looks to and from your camera to play with in camera and even monitor your camera wired or wirelessly. So a ton of really great features when you pair it with the apps. And by the way, I'm going to have links to all of these cameras in the description. They will likely be affiliate links, so if you want to use those, thank you. They help support the channel. But let's move on to the intermediate cameras, or should I say the cameras for content creators and solo freelancers, I would probably say, and that is the S52X, S12E, and GH7. Now keep in mind that I don't actually have the S12E, but it's the same body as this camera, so I'm just using it as a placeholder. Now, the S5 II and the G9 Mark II, even the S9, I would definitely put in this intermediate category as well because they have a ton of the same features. But the reason I put the S5 IIX, S12E, and the GH7 more as the recommendation in the intermediate category is because of the extra recording capabilities that these cameras offer. As an example, they have all intro recording options, which essentially is just a bigger file that gives you more flexibility for post-production work. They all allow the ability to record to RAW over HDMI, and the S12E and GH7 also offer the ability to record ProRes RAW internally as well. And you can also unlock ARRI Log C3 as a paid upgrade. That is just a log profile that ARRI uses on their cameras. If you want to learn more, I have a video talking about the workflow with ARRI Log C3, so feel free to go check that out. So if you have a beginner camera, maybe that's not even LUMIX specifically, but you know it well and you're maybe doing some freelance work like weddings or social content for businesses, or you are making a lot of your own YouTube or social media content, and you're ready for more pro video and photo features, then these are definitely the cameras to consider. These cameras range from about $1,500 to $2,500 though, so they are a bit more expensive, but you are getting more bang for your buck for that couple of $100s. Now, I've done a ton of content on this channel on the S5 IIX, so I recommend checking out those videos if this camera specifically interests you. And note that the GH7 is a Micro Four Thirds camera, but I did a sponsored project with LUMIX where we took the GH7s out to the middle of Utah and shot a ton of awesome footage of a professional motocross athlete, and I got probably the most epic shot I could ever get in my life. It's a crazy dolly zoom, so if you want to see what the GH7 is capable of, I recommend you go watch that video. It's also a good demonstration of the difference between full frame and micro four thirds is not really noticeable. Now, the only camera that I don't have much experience with is the S1 IIe. The best way to imagine it though is it's basically the camera that sits in between the S5 IIX and S1 II, which I'll get to the S1 II in a minute. But the last thing that you want to consider when deciding between these three is that the GH7 and S1 IIe offer the ability to record 32-bit flow audio if you buy this attachment right here, the XLR2. The S5 IIX does not have 32-bit float recording capabilities, and 32-bit flow is kind of like a raw audio recording format. It's not exactly the same, but it's kind of the same idea. So just to reiterate who I think should consider these cameras, if you're a solo freelance creator, videographer, or photographer, these are definitely the cameras I'd consider more over the first three cameras. Just remember that it's not that you can't use the S9 or G9 Mark II for these applications. It's just more about if you're a little bit more of an advanced user and you care a bit more about having raw recording capabilities, ARRI log, 32-bit float, recording, and maybe some other minor features that the beginner cameras don't have. Then yeah, these are the ones to consider. Now let's move on to the final tier, and that is the professional cameras. And the ones I have in here are the S1 II and S1R Mark II. So if you are a professional and you want the best of the best, these are the cameras to consider. Why are they pro? Well, they actually surprisingly have a lot of the same features that the GH7 and S1 IIe have. In fact, the GH7 and S1 IIe honestly are pretty much in the pro tier as well. However, there's mainly two reasons I put these in the pro tier and not those other two cameras. The first is price. These cameras will cost you $3,200 to $3,300, so they are the most expensive cameras LUMIX has to offer. The second reason comes down to a couple of very specific features that each camera has to offer that none of the other cameras have to offer. On the S1R Mark II, this one has a 44 megapixel sensor and is capable of recording up to 8K open gate. It can even do 8K raw open gate. It can also record in 4K at 48 or 60 FPS without it cropping to Super 35 or APS-C. So if you are pro and want the highest resolution in your videos without a crop and photos with a high resolution, then this one is the one to get. I would say that if you care less about having higher frame rate options, or if you're equally doing photos versus videos, or you want an amazing studio photography camera, then yeah, this is the camera to get. The S1 IIe, S1R2, and S1 II are all capable with Capture One, by the way, if that is something that is important to you. But the S1R2 has something special about the image, in my opinion, that none of the other LUMIX cameras have. The colors straight out of camera are just absolutely stunning, and it is a lot of the times the camera I want to grab for any kind of work I do, even family videos. I recommend watching this video I did of my son that will really show you just how beautiful the footage is straight from camera. Now, on the S1 II, there is two, maybe three things that it has that none of the other cameras have. The first and most important is that you can record at 48 and 60 frames per second in OpenGate. OpenGate is essentially the ability to record video in 3x2 or the entire camera sensor. All the other cameras can shoot in OpenGate. LUMIX is very well known for that, but they can only do it in up to 30 frames per second. So if you want that ability, this is the only camera that can do that. It can also shoot in full frame 60 FPS in RAW without a crop. This is the only LUMIX camera that can do this. So if recording in RAW without a crop at 60 FPS is one of your big priorities, then this is the one to get. This LUMIX camera also has the most frame rate options available. You can record in not just 48 and 60 FPS, but 96 FPS and 120 frames per second in 4K. Some of the other cameras can do 120 FPS, keep in mind, but there may be some limitations, like it's cropped, so it crops in, it's a lower resolution than 4K, or it's pixel binned. This can also record in 240 FPS in 1080p, so if tons of frame rate options are what you're looking for, then this is the camera to get. This is also an amazing photography camera. Actually, all of the LUMIX cameras are amazing photography cameras. Just know that most, if not all of the other ones, are about 24 megapixels as opposed to 44 like the S1R Mark II. But you may not need that high of megapixels in your photos, so just keep that in mind if you are trying to decide between the S1R2 and the S1 II. So, just to summarize, the Pro tier. If you are a more advanced user and you want the best of the best from LUMIX, then these two cameras are the ones to choose. And they both lean a bit more to either the photo side or video side. So depending on which is a priority to you, then it's up to you to decide which is best for you. But they are both hybrid cameras. They perform very well in both photo and video. So these two cameras are my workhorses. Depending on what type of thing I'm doing, I choose one over the other. So if I'm doing a live event where I'm maybe doing photos and taking some video, I'll typically go with the S1R2, like a corporate event or something like that. If I'm doing something like a live band concert or something for my full-time job or something like that, I will typically choose the S1 II that's more like video focused. But again, I also do stuff on the S1R2 just for video because I like the image that comes straight out of the camera. But if I didn't have the S1R2, I would probably just use the S1 II for photos. So just because I have both, I have that luxury of being able to choose which one I want to use for their strengths. It's kind of basically what I'm saying. So that's pretty much all I got. Remember when deciding which camera to choose that this isn't a perfect guide. And honestly, you can use any of the cameras really in a pro or beginner environment. This is more just kind of a general sense guide if you've never owned a LUMIX. And remember, again, that I mostly only talked about features that aren't available between the models. If there is a feature you are looking for in one of the cameras I didn't talk about, it is likely available on all of the cameras. There is some slight variance, like the S9 doesn't have live view composite. I think the S1 II, S1R2, and S1 IIe have multiple exposure feature, and I think the ability to perform a focus stack in camera and the others don't. Now, I could be wrong on that. I do know that those cameras have a mode called CinemaScope, and they also have a mode called cropless IBIS, as the other lower models like the S9, S5 II, S5 IIX, GH7, and G9 Mark II, they don't have that cropless IBIS setting or CinemaScope. But yeah, mostly everything is on all the cameras. And if there are differences, I actually cover that in my course. So just a reminder to check that out in the description if you are interested. And hopefully by the time this video is out, the sections on the S1 II, S1R2, and GH7 have released. And one last reminder, I'll have affiliate links to all the cameras in the description, and if you use those, they really help the channel. So thank you. But you can always support me just by hitting the subscribe button and the bell button to be notified of future uploads. Till the next video though, happy filming.